Hello everyone and welcome to the patch preview, where today we'll be taking a look at some of the changes coming to Destiny in patch 2.0, the patch that will prepare us for the Taken King. This patch is estimated to come out in September before the release of the Taken King. What we'll be looking at today is some long-awaited weapon rebalancing. We'll go over the weapon classes themselves first, then talk about exotics. I'll have timestamps in the description if you want to skip to anything in particular. Remember that while these patch notes are pretty detailed, things are still subject to change in between now and the patch. Also note that these are not the complete patch notes for patch 2.0, they only address weapon tuning specifically, and more stuff is probably on the way. The patch notes themselves are in the description. Auto rifles are in a bad spot right now. In 2.0, Bungie will have the ability to independently tune range and damage falloffs. This allows them to dictate the intended ranges and strength of a weapon. For example, here are a couple of shots from an internal test level where the damage drop-off is actually noticeable. So what are the goals and changes coming for auto rifles? The goal of an auto rifle is for it to be best at close to mid ranges, tune damage, stability, and range so that players want stability if they want to dominate the close range, and range if they want to dominate the mid range. The changes coming are as follows: increased base damage, start damage fall off closer to the player to emphasize its role, small reduction in base stability to make consistent precision shots require better control, and a 10% PvE damage buff. I'm glad to see that Bungie is finally making the range stat actually worth a damn. It has been basically an irrelevant stat since the game came out. Base damage increase is great, PvE buff is great, and making stats actually matter is also great. So far, so good. Next up, we have pulse rifles. Pulse rifles are in a very good spot right now in PvP, and would be the dominant weapon if it weren't for hand cannons. To counter this a little bit, Bungie is reducing the base stability of all pulse rifles very slightly so that landing shots still take skill, but landing critical shots with consistency takes even more skill and control. Goals for the pulse rifle include making the pulse rifle strong in the mid-range but still capable at close or longer ranges, rate of fire setting a pace for players to track targets then shoot for precision damage, and have pulse rifles be good but not dominant in PvP and increase their PvE efficiency. Changes coming in 2.0 are as follows: reduced base damage of medium rate of fire pulse rifles by 2.5%, which still keeps all precision PvP burst kills in between 2 and 3 bursts, but armor plays more of a factor. Small reduction in base stability to require better control to get all precision shots in a burst, and increase magazine sizes on all pulse rifles in their base inventory. I think these changes are pretty good. Pulse rifles are indeed very strong in PvP with pretty minimal recoil, making those 2 bursts relatively easy to land on those super slow rate of fire pulse rifles. However, the pulse rifle's PvE efficiency is pretty bad. Consider that Hawkmoon does around 2100 damage for a crit on a Vex, while a 3 crit burst from the Messenger does less than 1800 damage and requires more skill to land. A legendary hand cannon is pretty similar to the Messenger, but only requires 1 shot to do similar damage. Increasing their efficiency in PvE is good, and through the magazine size is definitely a way to do it. Next up, scout rifles. Scout rifles are actually in a great spot right now, all things considered, but Bungie wants to increase that delta between scout rifles and hand cannons. The goals for the scout rifle are as follows: the scout rifle should be the best long-range primary weapon, perform best with paced, consistent shooting, and that their rate of fire and optics are tuned in a way that makes them harder to use in close-range engagements. Changes coming to the scout rifle in 2.0 include an increase in base damage for medium to high rate of fire scout rifles, which will not affect time to kill in PvP versus a player with full health, increased magazine size for all scout rifles base inventory, reduce accuracy when firing from the hip, especially when firing shots quickly, and a 5% PvE damage increase. Yeah, once again, full agreement, scouts are in a great place right now, and these changes seem to just help refine the scout rifle weapon class into a more defined role, as if it wasn't defined already. A PvE buff is cool with me, however slight it might be. Next up are hand cannons. Hand cannons did receive a range nerf in patch 1.1.1, however, you probably didn't notice it. At all. Now, landing long-range shots with a hand cannon will require more precision aiming, and you will actually experience damage drop-off. In PvE, the hand cannon and scout rifle are very similar in nature, and Bungie looks to increase that delta. Hand cannons do more base damage while scouts have more ammo, but as it is right now, hand cannons can get almost as much ammo as modern scout rifles. To push this delta, range changes were made to the hand cannon, but they also reduced hand cannon base magazine sizes while increasing scout rifles. Hand cannons do more damage up close with fewer rounds. Scout rifles end up doing less damage per shot, but have more shots available. The goals for the hand cannon are optimal at close to medium range, optimal when shots are paced but less effective when fired rapidly, rewards agility under fire, rewards precision targeting and snapshots, and should not reliably be able to compete with scout rifles at long ranges. Changes coming to the hand cannons are as follows. Start damage fall off closer to the player to limit long range damage, small reduction in aim down sights accuracy to reduce the reliability of long range snapshots, reduced hipfire accuracy, reduced magazine size for all base inventories, and reduced base optics, aka zoom, for all hand cannons, where aim down sights grants more width as opposed to depth. I don't want to say that these changes are justified or anything, or that I like them, but I can understand why they are happening. Bungie is trying to completely reset hand cannons and make them fill a specific role in the game now, as opposed to just letting them be beastly at every range. With these changes, obviously nerfs are happening to the hand cannon. It sounds like they probably aren't going to be as good anymore, although on a per shot basis their damage isn't being affected or anything like that. I can see a lot of people saying that the exotic hand cannons were the problem and not the legendary ones, which I think is mostly true, but it seems like they're trying to completely revamp the weapon class as opposed to just outright nerf the weapons. Next up are shotguns. Shotguns have continuously had their range nerfed, and were actually in a good spot in 1.1.1 until Felwinter's Lie showed up, which allowed players to reforge their shotgun into its most perfect form. Then, for whatever reason, Bungie introduced 2 more of these kinds of shotguns in the House of Wolves, only making the issue worse. So, as opposed to hitting the shotguns themselves, they are hitting the problematic perks instead. Shotguns also became insanely good in PvE, and Bungie is looking to tone that lethality down just a bit. Goals for the shotgun. Most effective at very close range, duh. Complement melee attacks and other close quarter builds. Charging someone with a shotgun should be a risk-reward timing game, and reduce shotgun PvE effectiveness to reintroduce some risk. Changes coming to the shotgun in 2.0 are as follows. Shotgun perks that enhance lethality at range should be less effective when combined with a high initial range stat. So, shot package accuracy is being reduced by 30%, and rangefinder is being nerfed from 20% base range increase on aim down sights to 5%. They reduced the precision damage multiplier by 10% and reduced damage against AI by 10%. That's a PvE nerf. I honestly think the shot package nerf might not end up being enough, but that's essentially my only complaint with regards to the shotgun changes. I'd rather them just go overboard with it and slightly bring it back up if it's a problem, but that's more of a personal request as opposed to reasonably doing something. Other than that, PvE shotguns are insanely good right now, and bringing them down 10% is not unreasonable by any stretch of the imagination. They are incredibly strong. Fusion rifles are up next and have been basically non-existent in House of Wolves due to the power of shotguns. Originally, fusion rifle ranges were going to be nerfed slightly in 2.0, but they've scaled it back on close range fusion rifles so that they can compete with shotguns at close range. Goals for the fusion rifle. Have them be optimal in the mid-range where targets are easier to track, but they're not close enough to attack while charging up, require combat foresight and prediction to use effectively, and not be able to build a max range fusion rifle. Changes coming to the fusion rifle in 2.0 are slow charging high impact fusion rifles have had their range nerfed to make it more difficult to make a max range fusion rifle. Remember why everyone complained about them in the first place? Projectile speed for fusion rifles slightly reduced so players need to learn how to lead a target. Improved accuracy for short range and reduce accuracy for long range fusion rifles. Now, a lot of people are going to take these changes as, wow, they're making fusion rifles even worse now, and I don't think that's the intent of the changes. It sounds like they're just redefining the role like the hand cannon, where they want it to be a good close to mid-range weapon and are doing just a big re-roll of their role. The changes sound pretty bad on paper, and sound pretty bad when you read them, but I think once we see them in-game, things will get more clear. At least, that's what I hope is going to happen. Next up, we have sniper rifles, and there's pretty much only one thing getting tweaked globally on sniper rifles, and that is Final Round. Final round will now only affect the final shot of a magazine if it is a precision shot. If you don't like this change, you're probably a dirty final rounder, and that's it. Everyone point and laugh at the final rounders. A lot of people have suggested that final round come back as an option for sniper rifles now with this change, and I think that will be fine given that you can't really abuse it in PvP anymore. Rocket launchers are the final note for the overall weapon class tuning, and much like sniper rifles, very minimal changes are coming. Grenades and horseshoes let players be careless about their rocket placement in PvP. So changes coming to the rocket launcher are as follows. Slightly increased blast radius baseline for all rocket launchers, and grenades and horseshoes is getting a nerf to the radius of its proximity detonation. Completely fine with these changes. Grenades and horseshoes was very obnoxious to fight against if you weren't using blink. Next up in the patch notes, we have adjustments for certain exotic weapons. We don't know if these are only some of the weapons adjusted or anything like that right now. This could be the final list, they could add more. Once again, this is part of the 2.0 patch coming in September. First up, Hard Light. It's a piece of crap. We all know that. Bungie wants it to be better, and so do we. So, they're increasing the base stability to 80 from 65, increasing the bounce count for Hard Light projectiles, and Hard Light projectiles are not affected by damage falloff. I'm not sure this buff is going to be enough, but it's definitely a start. Once again, no one's using Hard Light for the ricochet rounds, but we'll see what happens. Stability buff is definitely a very good start. Projectiles being immune to damage falloff as well, that's nice, but remains to be seen if that's enough. Next up, Necrochasm. It's a piece of crap. We all know that. So, they're buffing it. Base stability is up to 60 from 40, increased magazine size, the Cursebringer perk will always trigger, has increased range, and deals more damage. Very solid buffs. Looking forward to it. Next up, the last word. It's a piece of crap, it's really good. Like, really, really good. Bungie is making it less good. The original intent of the weapon was to be an incredibly lethal close-range weapon when hip-fired. Right now, it's a little too good. The range stat is being dropped to 10 from 20, and the stability to 20 from 30. Effective range while aiming down sights is also reduced. The last word is gaining increased accuracy and precision damage aim assist scale when firing from the hip, and bugs were fixed with hip fire damage bonuses being applied incorrectly, so those are those 111 hits. Bungie is buffing this weapon for the way they would like players to use it. I'm absolutely fine with these changes, but what about perfect balance? Don't get ahead of me. Next, Thorn. Thorn has had its ups and downs from being what was considered one of the worst exotics in the game to now the best in PvP. The hand cannon general nerfs will affect Thorn's problematic range, but Thorn's damage over time is getting adjusted. The damage over time is now getting nerfed to about 33% of what it does now, so it's 67% nerf. But landing additional shots stacks the damage over time up to 5 times. This sounds like it reduces the potential for those annoying quick 2-shot kills in PvP, but it gives the damage over time a nice PvE buff. Being able to stack the dot sounds insane in PvP until you realize that by the time you stack the dot 5 times, you'll have shot your target to death anyway. This plus the hand cannon nerfs sounds like Thorn is going to be put in a much more reasonable spot. Hawkmoon is up next, and the nerfs to it are minor. First, they're nerfing the ability to one-shot someone by having all of the luck procs stack on the same bullet, and that's fair. Even though it was very rarely that it happened, I think I've gotten maybe 2 or 3 one-shots since I've had the weapon, I get why they're taking it out. It doesn't happen often enough for this nerf to even be noticed, so it's fine. Luck in the Chamber's bonus damage on Hawkmoon is being reduced by 3%, seems like a very random change, but that's fine. And when you get the Holding Aces perk, Hawkmoon's magazine size increases by 2. Overall, Hawkmoon did not get hit very hard, and that's because it really didn't need to get hit that hard. It relies a lot on luck for those really fast kills, and it's not a very consistent weapon at all, so I'm fine with these changes. Icebreaker is up next, and it's getting a nerf. We've all done it. Sat miles away during Cerberus Bay 3, popping shots, setting up camp, and just safely killing everything over the course of like 3 hours. Well, Bungie doesn't think that's a great idea for the game, and I can see where they're coming from. Therefore, Icebreaker has had its regeneration slowed down by 3 seconds, so now you'll regenerate 1 shot every 8 seconds instead of every 5 seconds. I wasn't expecting this nerf, seeing as Icebreaker has kind of been out of the limelight for a little while, but I can't say that I'm in absolute disagreement with it. It created an incredibly passive style of play, and I'm more than willing to bet it was designed as a weapon that was supposed to be used when you had a full magazine, you use all your shots, you go back to your primary and let it recharge, not something you just sit on for the entirety of a strike waiting for shots to regen. 8 seconds might be a little bit much, but I'm not in a huge outrage or anything like that. I think something that people aren't looking at is that Icebreaker is not a weapon that's supposed to be used for an entire mission or boss fight or strike, much like any other special weapon. Everyone keeps saying, oh, its DPS just got nerfed to hell, but it's not really the kind of weapon where I think that's applicable. It's supposed to be something that's used in between uses of other weapons. You whip out the Icebreaker for a situational use. Maybe you take down a major target, you flip it back, and you let it recharge up to a full magazine. The ammo regeneration is a nice bonus because it's reliable to shoot you back up to a full magazine over time. You don't need to worry about finding ammo for it, you just get it back. Not to mention, like it said in the post, that it created a very passive style of play, something that maybe Bungie wasn't exactly a big fan of or didn't want people doing. I think a lot of people think of their special weapons as just something to use instead of their primary to just dump as much damage as possible, as fast as possible, instead of actually strategically using the weapon, using it only when you need that bonus damage. That's just a devil's advocate. No Land Beyond is Garbo, so let's buff it. Increased weapon handling speed for faster aiming, ready, and stowaway. Adjusted sights to fix an overlap issue while aimed. Increased time decay of the Master to 8 seconds, which I assume to mean that the Master bonus lasts 8 seconds now. The Master also gets an additional 20% more precision damage bonus. So, that's nice. It's not going to make it a PvE superhero or anything, but that's nice. Black Hammer is not exotic, but it's on that level and it's getting an adjustment. They increased your base inventory size to 18 rounds, but now White Nail pulls from your inventory instead of just magically generating bullets out of nowhere. Not something I saw coming, but something I can definitely understand. With Black Hammer, you could just infinitely go to town on bosses, hitting them in the head, disabling them for very, very, very long periods of time. You'll still be able to shoot bosses for very long periods of time, it's just that you're gonna eventually run out of ammo now, and that's something I'm alright with, that's something I can live with. If you're the kind of person who thinks that Black Hammer is now absolute garbage or the worst sniper in the game now, I don't know what to tell you, because it's still going to be a fantastic sniper, you just can't stand still forever infinitely stunning a boss. Oh no. Lord of Wolves is actually getting a buff, which is nice. It hits like a truck, but the recovery bonus on it is basically crapola. So they are tripling the recovery boost for allies, which is nice. I would have preferred a slight radius increase as well, but I'll take what I can get. And finally, we come to the G-Horn. Yes, your beloved G-Horn currently dominates the heavy slot in PvE. It has ruined friendships, caused LFG sites to become a nightmare to navigate, has screwed up boss fights, and so much more. Its reign of terror will pretty much continue, just not at the rate it has been reigning. Wolfpack rounds are getting their damage reduced, but by how much is still unknown. Sorry folks, but this was the right move, whether you like it or not. We don't know how much they're getting nerfed by, but it's important to realize that 1, no other weapons have Wolfpack rounds, and 2, Wolfpack rounds still do damage. Therefore, G-Horn is still going to be pumping out more damage than any other rocket launcher in the game, especially single target. It's just going to be doing a little less of it, and that's fine. It was too strong. It was the answer to every single problem and strategy. Now it's just a little bit less so. It's not the end of the world. I think the reason I am bad or don't have the time to do stuff so I need G-Horn to do anything is a horrible reason to keep the weapon the way it was. Absolutely horrible. You can't go buy a guitar and then complain to Gibson that you're bad or you don't have time to learn how to play the guitar and they should just imbue you magically with talent. You can't just make a cake without the knowledge of how to actually put all the ingredients together. And this is a game, where the entire point is to figure out how to do something to be rewarded. G-Horn enabled people to completely disregard actually learning the game or fights and instead could just freely blast away everything in their path. And guess what? G-Horn is still going to be ridiculously good anyway. I have to continue to say this, but Bungie doesn't nerf stuff to say, F you community, we hate everything that you love. That's not the point of nerfing things. They nerfed it because they have the data to prove that it was too good and too heavily relied on by the community and created too many problems. So they fixed it. End of story. And let's be honest, most of you are probably overreacting to this nerf. Some other changes coming are as follows: reduced base weapon stats, stat perk tuning pass, and a stat perk column on talent grid clarification. So first, reduced base weapon stats. Basically, stats are being reduced for the new weapons coming in the Taken King. This won't affect any of the weapons earned in the first year of Destiny. The stat crunch is probably just related to the balance changes that are coming, nothing really to worry about. Next, stat perk tuning pass. A lot of the flat bonuses like Perfect Balance, Hammer Forged, Field Scout, and Send It provide a lot of a stat with no cost. Those bonuses are being reduced in potency, and so now if you want any sort of a large stat increase, a trade-off is going to have to be made, which ties into the last point. The center column of bonuses are going to be more consistent now in terms of the kinds of upgrades that they offer. The top perk will be a small flat increase, the middle perk will be a medium benefit or another small benefit, and the bottom will be a large benefit with a trade-off. It doesn't really change too many things though. Those are some of the changes coming with patch 2.0. As a whole, I love all of these changes. There are a couple of things in there that I'm a little iffy about, but overall, I love it. Fixes a lot of stuff I and plenty of other people held issue with. Fixes a lot of stuff that plenty of you all agreed with in my video from a couple of weeks ago. Very, very much looking forward to the changes, and I'm very, very much looking forward to the release of the Taken King. However, one thing I do want to say is that there's a big difference between being upset about a nerf and understanding why something was nerfed or buffed. You can be angry that G-Horn got nerfed, you can be angry that Black Hammer got nerfed, but all I request is that you think about the reasonings behind why these things were nerfed and realize that yes, while it sucks, most of these nerfs were justified. Don't take my understanding and comprehension of why things were nerfed as total acceptance of said nerfs, or as me being happy that things were nerfed. Yeah, some stuff, G-Horn, Last Word, Thorn, I'm happy that they're nerfed, I am. But then stuff like fusion rifles, hand cannons, I'm not the most thrilled, but I can understand the thought process behind why those things might have been nerfed or adjusted. And that's just what I want all of you to think about, instead of just filling with blind rage or thinking that Bungie doesn't know what they're doing or yelling dumb shit on the forums. Try to think like you're in their shoes. I'm not here to defend or scold any buffs or nerfs. I'm here to at least try to make you guys understand the decisions behind the nerfs. I'm going to shut the hell up now though. Thank you all very much for watching. Thank you for making it through this beast of a video, and I will see you all next time.